All right, great. So I hope everybody, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. It's great timing for this webinar because in one of our Facebook groups, Angelman Literacy and Education, this whole topic of finding and selecting books to offer our kids came up as people found some more kind of commercial resources for really engaging early readers, and sort of what we're looking for in books came up and how to really engage our kids in reading with us. So anyway, it was a great topic, and just based on that conversation, we've actually added to this webinar to be able to continue that conversation and keep having it. So our social media pages are really informing what we're doing here. So today we're talking about, it's the second week in November, so we're talking about reading and how reading supports communication and really the role of books with our kids. We'll be looking at how shared and independent reading supports language development for our students with Angelman, and how it really fosters everything we're working on with our kids' communication systems. We'll be just increasing all of our own awareness of the books that are available out there, particularly free downloadable books that we can download and edit and personalize and share with our kids, and sort of what we're looking for, what our goals are when we're trying to do that. And Carolyn in particular will be helping us extend our modeling of the core four, those words that we're really looking at in the specific communication training series sessions, to how we can extend that to shared reading. So within the 5 steps framework that we use, we're looking at shared and self-selected independent reading as teaching strategies, as instructional strategies, and the tools that we'll be using for this can be commercially produced books, can be homemade books, can be free downloadable books like the Tar Heel reader books that you're going to see today, but it can also be iPad applications such as Keynote and PowerPoint. The instructional framework that we've been using for how we kind of think about reading, you'll remember this from the October webinar where we talked about sort of two with and alone. For some of our kids, what we're really focused on is providing a model for our students to just become aware of and observe the activity. So some of our students are still learning what reading is. They're still learning it's something that they can participate in and enjoy. And so those kids are really at the 2 or 4 stage where we're just providing them that model and raising their awareness. But as soon as possible, we really want to get them to the with stage where they're actively participating. They know what reading is. They're imitating the reading behaviors of picking up books and turning pages and touching the pages and looking at the pages. So they're really exploring books. They're getting excited about books and how we can support more and more cognitive engagement with books and with the reading process. And some of our kids are transitioning into conventional readers. And so what are the strategies and skills that they need to be able to actually pick up a book and start reading it? For most of our kids, they're either at the 2 or the with stage, because most students with Angelman tend to be at the emergent level of literacy. So we'll be focusing more on that in this webinar. But then as the year progresses, we'll get more to the kids who are progressing towards conventional literacy. And this framework, this to versus with versus alone framework, is really based on the building blocks model from Dorothy Hall and Elaine Williams, where they adapted Patricia Cunningham's 4 blocks literacy approach to kindergarten, to a kind of developmentally appropriate 4 blocks for kindergarten. And it's just been an extremely helpful framework to think of our students with Angelman. So when we're looking at reading for our kids, we're really looking at, for some of our kids, we're just providing a model of reading to model that there's all these personally meaningful reasons to read, and there's books that can be very personalized and personally meaningful to them. And they're seeing from us that we read the words, we can retell the story, we can explore a book just looking at the pictures. There's lots of different things that we can do with books. For our students who are at the with stage, they really know what reading is and they're motivated by it. So it's an activity they want to be part of. We're going to really start encouraging their participation And these strategies are good for kids regardless what level they're at. So even if they're still becoming aware of reading, we can still encourage their participation with things like books that have repeated lines, that have lots of predictability, so kids can be predicting what's coming and have that cognitive engagement of knowing what's coming and thinking the words in their heads, using the pictures and sounds like rhyme to predict the words and start hearing the story being read with their inner voice. And they're really learning how we can manipulate sound and language, how we produce these sounds which become words, and we can produce words which go on a page and they're words that we read. And for our students who are at the more advanced stages, where they already know what reading is, they already do have that cognitive engagement of understanding that the text on the page is what we read. We can read those words in our head, or we can read the words out loud. Then those students are really beginning to understand all the different genres, all the different reasons. So we have books that are informational, we have books that are instructional, we have books that tell a story, books that help us learn about the world, books for poetry, right? Fiction versus nonfiction. We provide lots of different formats, and we make sure that we're providing instruction in things like letter names and sounds and sight words and spelling patterns, and developing their reading and listening comprehension. For our kids who are at the 2 stage, when we look at shared reading, if you've got students who are not currently engaged with reading, and this isn't an activity they seek out, then really what we're hoping they learn from our model of reading is that exploring language is fun. So not even just books, but just language is fun. Language is something I want in on. When I engage with books and another person, I get interaction. And so shared reading is something I want to do because I get so much social attention. That reading is valued by the people around me, and so I get even more attention because I'm engaged in such a valued activity. I'm learning the behaviors of reading, such as turning pages, looking at the pages, looking at the words. I'm just learning how fun and interesting books are. For our students who are more at that with stage, then what they're really learning is that the words on the page are what we say out loud. They're learning that they can read to themselves and that they're important when they read. They can look at a page and they can generate language in their head, and they can generate language with their communication system about what they're looking at. They're learning some strategies for comprehension, such as if I pick up a book, even if I can't read the words, I can look at the pictures, and the pictures will help me guess some of what the sentence is about, and I can make some predictions. And they're learning some listening comprehension strategies, such as if I really listen to the words, especially if there's predictable sentences, then I can start predicting what's coming, and I can start hearing that language in my head before the page is even in front of me. The kids are learning that they can hear the words in their head when we read, because if they have Angelin, chances are they can't speak the words out loud, but they can develop that inner voice that's so crucial for learning. And they're really developing that concept that they can read. They're developing that sense of success that they can read. And so when we look at really predictable books for our kids, it's because we want them to experience that success and to feel like they're really, really readers. And for our students who have some sight words, who have strong letter knowledge and know the names of letters and know the sounds of letters, we really want them developing that sense that I am a reader. I can read words. We want them to learn that they can learn words, that they have so much awareness of print that they realize that they've learned some words and therefore they can learn others. We want them to learn that the words that are in books are also in their communication system, so they can encounter books and text, and they can find those same words in whatever their communication system is. They're learning how letters make words and words make sentences. They're learning that they can generate words and sentences, and as always, they're learning that reading is really fun. Carolyn, before I go on, do you have anything you want to add to any of this?
I am just saying ditto amen again, Erin, so you just keep going, you're on a roll.
All right. And for some of those kids who are really transitioning to conventional literacy, think of the core words that we've been focusing on in this series, that might be one of the places you go to for looking at first sight words. Because I've been talking to some of you who are trying to follow the series, but your students already have such high receptive language and such high expressive language, such as using their communication system to, navigating several pages to be able to make a request, that sort of thing, that some folks have run into some barriers trying to figure out, do I model words that I know my student already really knows? And that's where I would look at reading as a way to be introducing them to those words that they already know. They know I, like, not, and want really well. They can actually use those words really well. Let's get them now, make sure that those words are in front of them as text, and now we're really working on those as automatic sight words along with the other kind of sight words you'd be looking at. What's really crucial to all of this is that our students need books. They need books about themselves and books about their world. We know that students with significant disabilities are very delayed in their reading development, and often it's because they're delayed in their language exposure if they haven't had a language modeled for them that they can access. And they're often delayed in their knowledge about the world because their disabilities have created a barrier to learning more about the world around them. So for example, my own daughter Maggie, she'd been to the zoo several times before she was even 5 years old. But I don't know how much she learned about the animals there because she has low vision. We don't know that she even saw the animals at the zoo. We had to, she needed books about animals and videos about animals to even start making that connection, because the combination of all of her disabilities meant she didn't learn as much about animals on a trip to the zoo as her sister did, because her sister didn't have disabilities and didn't have those same barriers. So that's part of what our kids need books for, is to help compensate for the impact of their disability in terms of how they develop world knowledge. Our kids are curious. They're really interested in the world, and so they need books that answer their questions about the world, especially because they're going to be delayed in their ability to ask questions about the world. That's going to be something that has to develop over time with their communication system. So we need to be really trying to predict what is it they're interested about and making sure that they've got books to start answering some of those questions. They need books that they can read by themselves independently, and that can be a photo album, right? That can be anything about all the people in their lives, but books that they can engage in independently. It might be digital books, it might be paper-based books, it might be commercial books, but they really need books that they can explore on their own, as well as books that they can read and share with others. They need books that they can read to others. And so in future webinars, we'll get into some of the assistive technology, such as iPad applications that allow them to actually read the book aloud to another person, and not just be read to, because that developmental milestone of realizing you can read to another person is really crucial. They need books that really draw attention to words, that they can really only read by looking at the words and not just looking at all the great pictures. They need books that make them want to read and books that make them want to learn how to read. So I know that's a lot of books, but we're going to give you some ideas today about how to find those books and select the books that will help our kids do that. And to do that, to give you kind of a framework for how we think about the range of books that our kids need access to, Carolyn, along with Karen Erickson and Don Johnston, developed something they call the Beginning Literacy Framework, to really help us understand that no student is at a single reading level. So often what we're seeing is trying to figure out what reading level a child is at, and if we see that they're at a very early reading level, then we keep providing them maybe lots of toddler books, like books about shapes and books about the toys that toddlers play with, that kind of thing, and we don't progress kids beyond that. We don't give them access to more books beyond that, because we have this idea that kids are at a single reading level. But what we know is that kids need 3 levels of text. So they need enrichment text. These are books we read to our students. They have rich text, rich vocabulary. They're learning about the world when we read them. They're learning new vocabulary when they're reading them. These are books that are beyond their readability level, but it builds their love for reading and it builds their motivation. So when you read Harry Potter to a 7-year-old, that's an enrichment text. You are providing access to a book that student could not otherwise access on their own in order to develop that love of reading and that interest in reading and develop imagination and everything else. And so our students with Angelman need enrichment level texts. So there will always be books that they can't read independently that are above their reading level, and that's our job, is to find those books and make them accessible in our shared reading, when we make recorded books, all that kind of thing. Students also, beginning readers, also need transitional level books. So these are books that the student can begin to read with support. And you guys are familiar with these books. These are those highly repetitive books. You'll see a repeating line. You'll see rhyme, lots of predictability, lots of very high frequency words where students can start to memorize the book. They can start to predict what's coming. If they listen to the words, they hear that repeated phrase, and they're already thinking it as we turn the page. The rhyme is giving them a sense of the sounds they're going to hear on the next page, and so they're already in their heads thinking about what they're going to see on the next page. So that's a transitional level text that really increases kids' cognitive engagement with the book, to have that predictability. And to have those scaffolds so that they can actively participate in reading before they can read the actual words independently. And then the third set, the third level of text our kids need is books that allow them to begin to read independently, where we don't provide lots of scaffolds like rhyme and rhythm and repetition and predictability, because we're really trying to get them to look at the words themselves. We want them to think about what they know about words, what they know about letters and letter sounds, and really start focusing on that. So Carolyn, what would you add to this?
So one thing I just want to add first is that Ruth Zielkowski was a big part of this as well. So I just want to make sure that her name is included. And then I just want to give sort of a connect to what you already know. So a really great example of an enrichment text that a lot of you have read to your children is Where the Wild Things Are, because they learn little pieces of that and they call it out with you, like they roared their terrible roars, they gnashed their terrible teeth. But if you just went to a page and covered the text and says, what does this page say? They would have a really, I'm sorry, you didn't cover up the text, but you just said, what does this page say? They're not reading the text, and it's not predictable enough for them to be able to retell it. Whereas in Brown Bear, you see kids learning that. If you cut the words apart and then gave them individual words like blue and horse and looking, they're not reading those words, but they can retell that story after a number of reading, and you hear them do what is often called as mock reading, which I really hate that term because it feels very real to those students. They get that feel of being a reader from that transitional text. And then conventional. There's a real problem with conventional because we don't have enough conventional texts where you have to look. So with transitional, there's kind of a joke about pattern plus picture equals success. That for the really easy ones, such as Brown Bear, you learn that pattern, color animal, what do you see? And students can look at the page and read that page, even though they're not actually reading the words. Conventional text, we don't do enough for our older students. A conventional text is where we made you look. You can't just memorize the pattern and then look at the pictures and read that page, because you don't know if this page says who did it or did you do it or you did it. So it has very simple words. It has the least of any of the 3 text types, but you have to look. We call it the made you look activity. So let's think of these as text types not just levels, because we want to be using multiple text types. Particularly, we're going to continue to use enrichment books, even though students are at the early conventional level. We might use then some harder transitional books so they can continue to feel really successful, even though they're able to read some words that have, for example, the top 40. So I'm going to be writing some conventional books that have our top 40 words so that we will see ways that it's not so predictable. Right now, I've made some transitional books for today, but over time, we're going to get more and more conventional. Back to you, Erin.
Awesome. If you just simply Google the Beginning Literacy Framework, you'll find this text, and we'll make sure that we share these slides again. But here you can just see some overviews of these different text types, which I think are extremely helpful. So in terms of just thinking about how rich the language is, the variety of the sentence patterns, more complex sentences, that's an enrichment text, right, where we're really immersing kids in language. We're modeling a use of language they may not be able to use yet, and that's just fine. That's all enrichment level, and we're really focused on their engagement. Transitional level text, you'll see those really simple and consistent sentence structures all within the same book. Lots of rhyme, lots of rhythm, lots of repetition and predictability. And those extra supports such as the images that help kids be able to really actively participate with the text, and then the conventional level text where, as Carolyn said, we make you look. Know that book selection for our kids is very individual, and something I've really been finding with our kids is that what's the conventional level text for one student might be an enrichment level text for another if, for example, one student has much more substantial issues with receptive language and receptive comprehension, that we might use simpler text, and that might be enrichment level, and that's okay. So what's happening, I think, with some of our kids is we're reading commercially produced books that don't meet their access needs in terms of receptive language, and so they're not showing engagement with those books because their language development, their receptive language development just isn't there yet. And so we need to be thinking about a book that the student can comprehend while we read it to them, but that's still an enrichment level text. For another student, I think the other problem I see really commonly is we're not reading enough enrichment level texts. We're looking at kids and assuming that based on their expressive use of language that they need such simple books that we're boring them to death with the books that they actually have access to. So all of this is going to be just very individual. We need to think about what students are interested in, what their receptive language needs are, what their expressive language needs are, and we need to recognize that some kids are not going to engage in books until they've developed just some more knowledge about the world. They might still need some concept development to be able to engage with some of those commercial books that are out there. But books are an awesome way to develop that same world knowledge and that same concept knowledge. So hopefully this kind of helps you just think through in terms of what different texts are. I wanted to say all this to say that if, for example, students need more world knowledge and concept development, I just encountered a school team that was talking about this in terms of mental age, that their presumption was that the student with Angelman had such a low mental age that they were trying to find texts that matched her mental age for concept development, that sort of thing. And really what it was, is, in my opinion, was a receptive language issue, and also an instruction issue, that all of this language was being used around her, but that student hadn't had anyone kind of explicitly teach her those concepts of knowledge yet. We don't need to think about it in terms of mental age. We just need to think about it in terms of where she's going next and make sure that we're using really age-respectful text to do it. So you will see a lot of Tar Heel Reader today as well as in future webinars. This is a free website, Tar Heel Reader, where speech therapists such as Carolyn Musselwhite, special educators, families, students have written and uploaded books that anyone can download, can read online, can download and read on your own computer or your own tablet, but also that you can edit and personalize. So as you're thinking about your own students' needs in terms of books, this is just a highly flexible and very easily accessible tool to help you do that. So I'm going to show you a Tar Heel reader book by one of my favorite speech therapists, Jane Farrell, called I Like Earrings. I'm going to read it quickly, but we'll talk about it in a minute. I like earrings. I like short earrings. I like long earrings. I like shell earrings. I like heart earrings. I like blue earrings. I like green earrings. I like flower earrings. I like bird earrings. I really like earrings. I like fish earrings. I like turtle earrings. I like orange earrings. I like purple earrings. I really, really like earrings. I like round earrings. I like star earrings. I like fruit earrings. I like music earrings. But I don't like yellow earrings. Can you change them for me? So think for a second, what did you notice about that text? What did you notice in terms of some of the features of the text, the sentences, the word choice? And I'll go ahead and show you what I noticed about it. So I think what you all noticed was there was a simple, repetitive, repeated line. So throughout most of the book, I like blank earrings. So there was a very high frequency phrase, I like, plus a describing word, and then this repeated noun. But you'll notice that the book wasn't 100% predictable. Every 5-6 pages, something changed in the text, and so we had to look. There was a major look moment because we couldn't just follow the whole thing through, and that's really crucial for keeping our kids' cognitive engagement, keeping their attention on the text, right, and not just in their heads going, yep, I know, this is a I like something earrings, but really trying to keep them looking at the text. So for example, a text like that, one of the strategies we can show our kids is that when you see a longer sentence, such as this, notice that this is a longer sentence and this is a shorter one. There's probably more words in this longer sentence. So when we notice a long sentence, we need to stop and really look at those words and see which words are different and which words have changed. So that's really one of the values of having it not to be highly predictable. There's some concept development around things like opposites and these really common describing words, and it might appeal to specific students who are really interested in earrings. Carolyn, is there anything you want to add about this?
It would, just things like we teach our kids shapes in such just unbelievably boring ways, and notice there were a few shapes in there. It's just so much more rich. And the other thing I'd like to point out was that she added something very unexpected at the end. I mean,
yes, exactly.
That common people, were you seeing a cow with earrings? Because I remember the first time I read it, it was an LOL book, even for me as an adult. And I used this with some girls who are preteens in my literacy group, and they also LOL'd at the end when they saw that cow with earrings. So it just was a really fun thing. It made them want to read it again. Very powerful. Yes. So her adding really and ending up with I do not like, and then the cow are three things that made what could have been a yawn really, really fun. So thinking about this is a great way to look at concepts, but it's also a great way to have a book that kids are going to want to read multiple times to increase their fluency.
And let's say we have an IEP goal for this student where they're learning shapes and they're learning colors. One really natural way to elicit that information from the student, other than point to or show me, is let's add a page. What do you like about earrings? What's a shape that you of earring that we should go search for and add a page on? Or what's your favorite color? Let's find earrings in that color. And if kids can engage in that and they can offer a new color, well, we know that they know the concept of colors. But it just gives us this natural opportunity to use those words, to use that vocabulary that we might otherwise find ourselves just drilling them on.
Absolutely. Now we've got authentic and interactive and fun instead of dance for grandma.
Exactly. So for your student, just thinking about whatever student is most in your mind when you're watching this, would this level of text that we just looked at from Jane Farrell, would that be enrichment? Would it be transitional, or would it be conventional? And I'm imagining for most of you that's a transitional level text. That's what I would expect for almost all of our kids because of that, again, that highly repeated sentence structure, the clues that the visual gave us to be able to fill in the gap. But we do have kids, for example, where that would be too long of a book. That's too many pages for them to be able to attend to yet, where their attention to language is going to be taxed by that, and we might shorten it. We have kids who are learning to read those complete sentences, and it's those pages where it's been mixed up that would actually slow them down, right? So certainly we have kids who are reading words like I like, and that sort of thing. So depending on where your kid is at, they might be at a different, that one text might be a different type of text for them.
And that other example we talked about, the shapes, if you have really not knowledgeable about shapes, that's where the enrichment would come in, that we're giving you examples of heart versus star, etc.
Right. Awesome. So, and there's all kinds of ways that we might adapt that book. I know many families have, with girls who really love earrings and bling, have reduced the length of the book to make it shorter because that's just as long as their child will attend, or they've added pages based on their own child's interests. Some have gone in and changed out photos so that the pictures are actual shapes or colors, things that are more that are really the student's own, or we've got one little girl who she actually modeled a whole bunch of earrings so that it's a picture of her wearing the different kinds of earrings. Some folks have increased the complexity of the sentences by, for example, using less common, less high frequency descriptive words, such as instead of different colors, rather than just blue and green and yellow, the less common ones like purple and teal, that sort of thing. And some have really tried to turn it into a narrative where it's a book about me and how much I love earrings, and I'm actually going to tell a story with it. So there's lots of things that we can do with text, and you can see that that's how it really starts to change the type of text that it is. One reason I love Tar Heel readers so much is that you can download them to your computer. Now it's a PowerPoint, and now you can start editing it. So you can have one book like I Like Earrings, and you just change out the text on a few different pages, and now you've got two books where you started with one, and it's not that much extra work to be able to create a new level of text from the same original book. So here's an example of a Things I Like book from one of our families. Things I like. I like to ride in cars outside. I like to walk around the city. I like to take baths. I like to ride my tricycle. And there was more, but this was just an awesome book. So you can imagine this little girl absolutely loves books about herself doing common things. There might be some enrichment level text in here, although I think given what I know about this little girl, this is very much consistent with her, certainly her receptive understanding, and this is a child who could start adding to what else it is that she likes to do, but this is going to just be a highly engaging book. Did you notice anything else about the book? And you could offer that as a comment by writing a comment to the moderator, or you can think about it. But what I really liked is just how highly personalized it is. And we're really teaching her the value of I like. This is the kind of book that she can show to other people and have a lot more social interaction with. So she's learning really personal, meaningful reasons to use phrases like I like to, right? We really want to see our kids using those, but these kind of books help reinforce the value of learning those phrases. So highly personalized, rich photos, robust vocabulary. It wasn't too simple. But did you feel like you learned something about that student? Do you feel like you learned about that little girl something, or you felt some connection, like you know her, having read that book with her? And I think that's the real value. If you get that sense from the book, then that's the real value, the highest value for these books, is the social interaction.
And think about her sharing this book with friends, because now they're learning something about her, and
exactly.
She's becoming more, it's more the you're like me. Wow. Oh, I like to ride my tricycle. Oh, really? I love bubble baths. That whole shared connections, which are a huge part of developing friendships. So this has a lot of power beyond just AAC, beyond literacy. Really,
Exactly.
really nice exemplar.
And we talked last month in the writing webinar about writing these kind of books with our kids, and that's exactly why. That until our kids have the skills to use their communication systems to be able to share about themselves to that level, to that depth, then they need books like this just as a communication support alone. So, and an interaction support alone. Here's an example. I had a whole book of this. I think Maggie deleted some of the pages, but Maggie, what do you see? I see Harry looking at me. Some of Maggie's friends, they were a communication circle that Carolyn came and formed for her so that her friends would learn her communication system. And they went through and wrote this whole book for her, putting pictures of themselves on each page and pictures of the different boys from One Direction. So depending on who your student is, that book might be purely just a transitional book. That's what I would expect for most of our kids. It has that highly predictable sentence structure like we would see in the original Brown Bear, but we've just mixed it up to make it more personalized and more age respectful of our older students, but we've also got kids who are developing those actual reading skills to be able to read I, see, looking at me. Certainly at me, I, and see are just awesome sight words. And we have kids for whom that would just be about pure fun and engagement.
And just to remind you, it can't be conventional if we have the same sentence frame in both of them. If we want it to be conventional, we're going to have to start mixing it up and defying expectations and major look. Because otherwise, you can just look at the picture of Maggie and the picture of Harry and know that this page says, I see Harry looking at me. So that's the kind of thing we'll play around with next month when we do the Balanced Literacy Framework. We'll see how you can take a transitional book and make it conventional.
Oh, that's awesome. Here's an example of a book. This was a team that was so committed to the student and working so hard. And he had a whole book like this. Penguins can waddle. Penguins can march. And he loved penguins. Penguins can swim. They were putting a lot of energy into making these highly personalized books for him. So what did you notice about that text? And I'll show you the pages again. So simple, repetitive, repeated lines, right? It's a penguin can plus verb book. It was 100% predictable. There was nothing in it that you couldn't predict. There was nothing that deviated from the penguins can structure. And there was symbol-supported text, right? And this is something we still see quite commonly with many of our kids, where we've paired a symbol with individual words in the hope that it's going to help the student actually access the text. So let's ask whether symbol-supported text is helpful. And I'd be curious if we just look at those pages again, if any of you actually find the symbol support helpful. What the research is telling us is that what we've actually done to some extent is just cluttered the page. And we're undermining the same reading strategies that we're trying to teach through shared reading. So if you think about earlier in this webinar, we talked about some of the reading strategies we're helping kids develop, such as learning that the words on the page, it's the words that we read out loud. We undermine that if we say, oh, don't worry about looking at the words, just look at this symbol. We're trying to teach our kids, you can read to yourself, and you're important when you read, just look at the words. But then we're saying, actually, you can only read symbols, which now has dramatically reduced their access to books if we're undermining a student's sense of confidence that they can actually learn how to look at the text. With our kids, when we're teaching them when we're doing shared reading, we're teaching them, look at the pictures, it will help you guess some of the sentence, and listen to the words so you can predict some of the sentence. But we undermine that when we put symbols on the page. And you can see from looking at this, we don't need a symbol for penguins because this is a penguins book. If I listen to the words and I look at the pictures, I know this is a book about penguins. I can predict that it says penguins, that that first word is penguins even without the symbol support. And if I look at the picture of what those penguins are doing, I don't need the symbol support to be able to understand that those penguins are swimming, right? So if we really want to teach our kids those conventional reading strategies, those general education reading strategies that help all children learn how to read and access books, then we need to not give them the symbol supported text, or we're going to accidentally be undermining exactly what we're trying to do.
And I'd like to jump in there real fast. So I just want you to type in, were you alive in the 1950s? Any of you guys? Were you around to read the research in the 50s? I'm guessing that's a no. So in the 50s, they did all this they called rebus, all this rebus research, where they took the word cat and they made the A and added little ears and a tail, etc., to try to make it easier. Guess what? Not only did it not make it easier, it actually decreased reading. So we have known, let's see, ink's dry on that research. I believe we're up to 60 years now. So we want to not use symbols for words we want them to read. So here is the rule. If you want them to read the word, take away the symbol. And you know what else is so great about that? You just saved yourself so much time in creating books. Yeehaw! So it's a win-win situation. Good for the kids, good for the team, because we're not spending so much time symbolating. So if you're symbolating any high-frequency words or any words that are pictured on the page, just stop. And I would actually say just stop symbolating entirely in the book.
And that's exactly the role of the photos. That's why we add those. I think the only research I've seen suggesting that any symbols on the page are helpful is if maybe it was an instructional text, so you're learning how to do something, maybe it's a recipe, and your student can read some of those high-frequency words, but can't read a word like refrigerator. That's when we provide a visual. It doesn't have to be a symbol, but that's when we provide the visual to help provide that extra context to be able to think through what that last word is. I'm going to take something out of the refrigerator. I know the words say take and butter and out, but I don't know that last long word, and now we're going to provide a visual to help provide that context. But that would be the only time. This is an example, and Carolyn, I would love your thoughts on this because I didn't show it to you before I put it in the slideshow, but this was where we believe there's some sight words that, in this case, Maggie already knows, and we really want to get her eyes on the text. So what we did was we duplicated each page and took the photo off the first page, trying to draw her attention just to the text, because it's really hard to find those conventional level text for such emergent readers. So we created a first page where we're trying to make the words, she's got to look because it's just so
right.
vivid, and then provide the visual on the second page afterwards. So this is kind of one of the things we've been playing. Cool. Anything you would add or change to this?
I like it a lot. Obviously you're trying to highlight the initial letter, and that's fine to do on some books, but obviously we don't want to do that on every book because she's going to have to be able to read Ella without the E highlighted. So I'm fine with doing that initially, and then at some point, not having that highlighted.
Awesome. Cool. And I think in this book it was just people, and it was a new version. So it had originally been an alphabet book of all of her favorite people, and we decided to make a new version of the alphabet book. It's all the same pages. But where we're drawing attention to the initial letter without the structure of the A is for, the E is for, etc.
Right. And it's also repetition with variation, which is very powerful, which you might have said in the next slide.
I didn't, but I'm going to say that and claim it. I'm not sure I did that on purpose. So there was no story structure, no information. It's not enrichment level text. There's no repeated lines. I wouldn't call that a transitional level text, but I'd love your thoughts. Carolyn, what I was trying to do was put that visual emphasis on initial letters, and we think that these are the sight words Maggie has. So we really.
I would not call it transitional either. There's no pattern. It's just
perfect.
Captions, and so caption books are going to be at the more of a conventional type thing.
Right.
If they're readable to the students. Obviously, some things like papyrus might not be a great papyrus. Having an Egypt book would be more like an alphabet book rather than being a conventional.
And the reason we had done names is just from the research that for most kids, names tend to be the first sight words, and those are the sight words she tends to have. For a lot of our kids who are pod users, all their people are often listed in a list in their pod book, and they start using those lists and those actual words. And so we're trying to build on what we think is her strongest sight word knowledge. But this was just our one experimental way to work on that. And now, Carolyn, I'm going to hand it over to you. We're going to share screens so you can do the phonemic fun learning part next with your books.
Okay, let me see if I'm up. Yes, I am. Yay, we love it when it works. So I am going to just go through this quickly. This is a, show my screen there. Is it? So let's see if I'm showing now. Am I showing? Is my screen showing?
It's showing.
Okay, so let's go. So I am going to just jump in, and we're going to look at this website. This is We Blew It. I showed you a teaser from this last week. This is from Read a Book. Just a very, very fun book, and I'm going to show you a couple of pages and then talk about how we can use that from a shared reading and commenting and using our AAC. Uh-oh, he blew it, and she knew it. So here are a few things that we could do. We're going to model by retelling using those core words. Well, this one is pretty obvious. He blew it. So what I'm going to do, caution, beep, 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 do not read the story using the talker. Reading should be about looking at the text. So we read that story, and then we can talk about it after we read it. So after I read, and I'm showing the words, uh-oh, he blew it. Oh my gosh, look at that picture. I agree, Jennifer. He blew it. So now I'm going on her talker to retell that story, okay? I'm making sure her eyes are on the print when we are reading. Dr. Gretchen Hanser has really helped me to understand the importance of this, because I think there's this lure to get our kids to just start reading the book that we've written on using their communication device, but that's not helping their inner voice, looking at the text and reading it, and that is not helping their fluency, their reading fluency, because we look at a word and they come down and say it on your page. So we don't want our kids reading the book by looking at it. We want by using their communication set. We want them reading the book by looking at text, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards. And sometimes that might mean retelling it. Caution, do not demand your student to use the target words. Remember, down with demands, up with invitations, okay? So let's go to the next page where we have exploring categories, another purpose for using this. So we're not going to go crazy. We might use the generic word boy, because that's a word that's going to be helpful a lot. So look at that boy. Oh my gosh, look at that boy, Kevin. But we are not going crazy. We're not going all fringy on the kids. We're not going to try to find the word dishwasher. Oh, I see, detergent. Really? That's just not the important thing of this picture. The boy is the important thing of this picture if we're looking for a category word to share. We can reflect what our student is showing us, as always, and I'm thinking now about our students that we're doing the 2 and 4. They're kind of smiling and leaning forward to the picture, and I can say, oh, I think you like this modeling. Of course, the words that are in caps are the ones that I'm modeling for them. Here's another story that I wrote to go along with this. This is hot off the press, and I did just post this at Tar Heel Reader, but we are also going to post it on the Angelman site so you don't have to look for it. He likes, she likes. She likes to sing. He likes to swing. So we've got that rhyming to help with our predictions. So we've got a repetitive pattern, he likes, and then we've added 2 in both pages. Now we've got sing versus swing. So we've got the rhyming going on to help us figure it out. So we've got pattern plus picture, and we've added an extra clue of rhyming to really help students be successful. So let's look at the next 2 pages. He likes cats. She likes rats. So again, highly predictable based on the pattern. Note that the pattern from the first couplet change he likes to, she likes to, and now we have he likes, she likes. So trying to make sure that we're not just getting into a completely rote pattern. So how will we use this with their communication device? We can model through retelling again. Oh, we're saying she likes. After we read the book, then we're going to go back and say she likes that rat, doesn't she? I can tell that she likes her rat. We're describing it. Oh my gosh, she really does like her rat. You know what? She looks, oh, let's see, get that talk aloud in there. It's it's a feeling. Let me go find it. Oh, yep, here are the feelings. Happy. She looks really happy with her rat. Again, we want to be sure that we're reflecting their nonverbal cues. I think you do not like rats. And now I'm getting to model the word from this core 3, you, and then going back to core set 1 with not. So we're getting to model lots of words, and we're not going crazy. I'm not trying to find whiskers on there. We might find the word rat. That would be a great category word, but we're not worrying about finding that word whiskers. And then we're expanding. The student says like, and we're like, yes, you like rats. And really powerful to show that combination. And for some of our students, doing the pronoun plus the verb is going to be much more powerful, because if we hit you, then words pop up that predict. Or, for example, if you have students who are using Speak for Yourself or using Words for Life, when they hit you, it's a 2-hit to do you like. Where if I just taught you by itself and I just taught you the word like by itself, that would be 4 hits. But when we put them together, you've got that nice combination going on to save time and energy. 2 more words, pages from the book. He likes to bounce. She likes to pounce. And just trying to do a little bit of higher level vocabulary. The word pounce is a word that might be an enrichment word for some of our students, but it's really closely clearly shown on here. So we can talk about modeling through retelling. Words like she go up, describing, oh, she is pretty, or she's orange. What a neat color. Or I love that fox. She is cool. So we might be describing, getting into some other categories. So we're helping our students to explore more vocabulary. And then we might just reflect on what our student is showing us. I had a student who would sort of stroke pages on things she liked, and that gave me a real clue that she liked this, and she wanted to tell me that she liked it, and I think, or that she thought it was nice, or she thought it was good. So I can reflect, are you telling me she is nice? Or we might tell you, are you telling me that I like her? And the final one is looking at expanding. The student says she, and I go, right, she is pretty. So we're, again, getting a little more information. The next couplet, she likes to sun, he likes to run. Let's look at these. And now what I want you guys to do is to write in some things that you would fill in one of those. So just type in model through retelling. Let's have a couple people write it in. And Amy, you can share me what people are writing, how we might retell that. So I might say something like, he can go. That would be high frequency words. Maybe I'm not going to go look for the word run. How about describing? Let's describe that picture. What's a good word for describing that? If you guys would write those in, that'd be really helpful.
Okay, Caroline, they're starting to come in. One is
Great.
Fat.
Absolutely.
One is wet, happy.
Nice.
And one is fast.
See, exactly. That's perfect. So we're like, wow, he is fast. And the words I'm emphasizing are the ones that I would be modeling on the communication device. But I'm going to do that talk aloud. Where is fast located? And remember that one thing you can do as a parent is rehearse. So you can go look at the book and pick a page that you want to use a describing word and go, okay, fast. You know what? My son loves things that are fast. He loves, loves, loves anything fast. I'm going to show him where the word fast is. Oh, wait, I don't actually know where the word fast is. So you're going to look for it first so you're not frumphering around while you're trying to do the activity. And the other thing you're going to do is you're going to do a talk out loud. So you're going to say, well, let's see, fast. Where's fast? Oh, it's one of your describing words. It's under, so you're talking about how you found that particular word fast. Let's look at reflecting. The student nods when they come to this page. They nod their head. I think you're saying, okay, if somebody write in what you think their child might be saying if they nodded when they saw that.
Okay, one is that fun.
Absolutely.
He go.
Perfect.
And he happy.
These are great. So we're getting to use some of our core words like he. We're all using high frequency words. You guys are totally getting this, that we're trying to model a few category words or more fringe words, and also a lot of our high frequency words. This is fabulous. Okay, last test for this one. The student says like. Well, how might you expand that to a 2 or even a 3 word utterance using some key words?
One is like to go.
Nice.
You like water.
Perfect.
Fun. Like to run. I like to.
These are all great. So everybody's getting it. Let's go to the next story. Who did it? And again, these are going to be at Tar Heel. These are up at Tar Heel Reader, but we're also going to put them on the Angelman website. Who did this? You. So now you see we're having fun, but we're using 2 of our keywords, who and you. Who ate this? You. And with really fun pictures so the kids are going to just laugh and want to read it again. So let's look at the cake example and let's explore some new words. So I might go find the word cake and I'm going to say cake. Oh, I know this is on your talker. Let's see. I'm going to go to the food category. Cake is a dessert. So I'm going to desserts. Oh, I think I see it. And then we pause to see if your student wants to jump in. But again, that's an invitation. It is not a demand. If they don't do it, then I just go show cake. And then I say, you know what I say about cake? Yum! I wonder where yum is. Oh, that's right. It's under my chat words. Yum! That type of thing. Again, I have looked in advance, so I'm not kind of freaking out and the kid's not getting up and running away. Model through retelling. Who do you think ate it? And this is a rhetorical question. We do not sit there and watch them have to be all anxious about answering it. We might have fun and go to picture a page of family members and say, I think it was Daddy. Just having fun with the fact that Daddy sometimes eats up stuff before we get to have seconds. Describe. It looks good. Reflect. The kid grins. Are you telling me you like cake? Expand. The student says like, right, says like, and you say right, you like that. Next couplet, who did this? I mean, is that not a fun picture? How many of our kids are going to love that picture? You. All right, so let's, because we're kind of running out of time, I'm going to jump straight to describe. What's a describing word? Write that in. Any takers, Amy?
We got one that says silly.
Perfect. Silly, funny, pink. We could be, again, a really appropriate place to practice our describing words such as colors in a fun, interactive way. Reflecting, the student laughs and you say, I think you're saying,
He looks funny.
okay, he looks funny. We get to practice that he word. I think you're saying, you like it. I think you're saying, it is silly, etc. Now the last one, expand. The student asks for, says who, and you respond.
The dog is silly.
The dog is silly. But if we want to actually expand on the who, that's a great response if your kid says who. But if we're trying to expand on the who, we might say, just go back and say, who did this? Or who put that on me? Some simple, some sentences like that where we're just getting to add one or two more words to the who. So Erin, I'm going to let's turn it back to you. Do I have to do that? Amy, can you turn it back to Erin for the ending?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Is it there now?
You're there.
All right.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So possible next steps. Carolyn, that was so awesome. And I just love how applied it was, because I think that's really the major question that we keep getting from folks is, now show me how to do that. And I just felt so shown. That was awesome. Possible next steps. So various things you can do. You can go to Tar Heel Reader or go to the ASF Communication Training Series site, download one of those books from Carolyn, print it out or read it electronically. I mean, Maggie really likes to read with me where I've just got the books on my laptop, and we just scroll through that way. Think about searching Tar Heel Reader using search terms that your student is particularly interested in. I've gone into Tar Heel Reader just searching using some of the core words that we're focusing on, and they're so high frequency that a lot of books, that's another option. So especially if you do something like and trains, you will get a lot of books that use those two words quite a bit. And take a look at your child's library, the books that are available to your child to read to your student, and just think about the level of text, the type of text, and start to evaluate whether you've got a good representation of books that we would consider an enrichment level text versus a transitional level text with those highly predictable features versus a conventional level text where we really made you look. And really we're getting eyes on text and attention to those actual words before predicting what the book likely says. And then share your experiences in the Facebook group. We would love to hear from you. I'm getting lots of private messages and emails, but many of you are shy and don't want to post publicly. But I can tell you that 96% of everything that comes to me privately is stuff that you are all thinking about publicly. So you're all thinking about individually, and we should go ahead and think about it publicly as a group. So please share your experiences in the Facebook group, and we would love to hear from you and to see what kinds of texts you find or create for your student. So while you guys start thinking about questions or comments, let me just say that the ASF Communication Training Series is made available by the Angelman Syndrome Foundation through a generous grant from the Foster Family Charitable Foundation in California, and that's what's making all of this possible. And now we can go to questions.
Okay, we do have a couple questions. Most of them that we have right now are related to using images and icons. So the first one that we have is, what about pages when there aren't any pictures? So for example, she's talking about with a slightly older student, like junior high age. When they are in middle school and beyond, there may be a picture at the beginning of the chapter, but then there aren't pictures on the other pages. For example, the James Patterson middle school books, even though these books are beyond your students' level, as other kids their age are reading those books, do you think it's worthwhile to read those books to an older student and maybe not read the entire text, but paraphrase?
Absolutely. And you'll see that there's already some commercially produced books out there for that. So for example, the Don Johnston Start to Finish books. They've taken grade level chapter books and recreated them, you could say paraphrased them, using much more easily decodable text, so for example, taking things like Romeo and Juliet and rewriting it at a second grade or so reading level. And that kind of text I actually find is really helpful for the whole class. So you don't even need to just have that for the student with Angelman, because anyone who's ever struggled through Romeo and Juliet actually really appreciates the chance to study the book more from learning the plot and learning the characters, and now actually engage in that more archaic language.